Go ahead. Hi, folks. Happy Monday. Sorry about that. No, I have to say, there's something wrong with StreamYard lately where you hit the start button and it doesn't start. It starts circling and circling and circling, and it makes me look like a jackass. And, of course, Russ is nice enough to point out that I look like a jackass. He did it on the Off the Post show. So, thankfully, he hasn't said anything yet. So, we'll keep our fingers.
You don't want to say go ahead. I just figured you start talking first. Like,
go ahead. Pre-show. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the NFL draft. I actually did a podcast. Mike was on it a little bit. It's on SoundCloud. It's for Jets Rehab. And we did it, and we're just very honest about what the Jets should do, what they've done in the past. We didn't get crazy about the past, but I kind of wonder with you, Kev, you know, the draft should be like this magical, fun thing for NFL fans, but then, you know, with franchises like you and I have, they continually screw it up. So it's just like, so I don't know how you feel about it. Me, I always had mixed feelings. Like, the Jets have a load of picks, right? I'm looking for them to take one guy that I want, and the odds are they probably won't because they always think they're smarter than everybody else. So I'm kind of wondering how you feel about the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a struggle because, you know, now it's because of social media. You know, what helps and what hurts is, first of all, is the NFL draft, you get immediate help. You know, right. You don't see that in other drafts, but, you know, these guys, 4 of them probably are going to start for you. Right. And so, you know, you're looking there and there's always a big beef. Some people want offense, some want defense. And, you know, like in Detroit, one of the arguments is the defense is so horrible, but the offense is getting better. So do you add the extra wide receiver that will make your offense maybe go from pretty good to real good, or do you keep plugging away and try to make that defense, which is just awful?
I think you have to go defense because you know as well as I do, unless you're scoring 50 points a game, you're not going to win with a bad defense.
Right, but they're not going to win no matter what they do. So the argument is at least we can be entertained.
Right.
But anyway, in Detroit here, there's a lot of discussion about the quarterback, and so you know that'll keep it interesting. I don't believe for a minute.
Are you talking about Wilkins?
Well, they're one of the quarterbacks down with their second pick.
Willis.
Yeah,
Willis
will be gone, but I don't think they'll take a quarterback with their number 2 pick. I would be stunned by that. But I do think they'll would consider a quarterback, you know, down into the first round. But I mean, the NFL draft, that's quite a magic formula that the NFL has because it's over 4 days. Like that was so smart to drag that over 4 days. Like,
although will you watch for 4 days? I won't.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, and I do.
Wow.
Now on the second and on the final days, it's 3 days, right? It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days. On the final on Saturday, like I pop in and out, you know, to catch up. But I will watch on,
I'll watch the whole first day. I pop in and out for the second round.
Okay. I'll just say this because we've done this for like the last 6 or 7 years. A bunch of guys who I used to work with at my old job. We go to, you know, a sports bar in the area. We, you know, make sure we get there early because a lot of people do the same thing. Get a big table, get a whole bunch of wings and French fries and stuff like that. Sit there and have, you know, a few pops and stay there for the entire first round. Now, when the Bills are taking a pick 8th, like they or 7th when they drafted Josh Allen, then the evening is over early. When they're picking 28th like they did last year, or 30th like last year, or 25th like this year, you know, by the time we get to the Bills pick, unless they trade up, everybody's going to need an Uber because they're going to be drunk. But you know, so but it is fun. It's like I really don't bone up on the NFL draft until say sort of the week before. But the one thing that's interesting is that, like, I heard this morning, Russ, from the local station, that the guy who was supposed to be the projected number 1, his stock is falling. And was it Trayvon Walker?
Trayvon Walker is the one that I wrote that I think will be the number 1 because
Yeah.
he's been rising.
Right.
And of course, I want the Jets to get him, so that's a guarantee he will go number one because then he won't have a shot.
And the talk is that the guy who's going to slip to the Jets is Hutchinson, I think his name was. So
Yeah.
Russ, you're basically just like you're the Jets are like the Leafs, Mike's Leafs, right? Like whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
It's similar as
Sabres.
like I told Kevin, the Jets probably have like 6-7 picks. They might take one guy I like, maybe none. That I've looked at and said this guy will really help the team. Like there's a receiver, he's the fastest guy in the draft, right? He runs a 4.25.
Right.
And I get that he's not going to go in the first round now, but the Jets have second round picks. Maybe they look at him then. 6 other teams have called him in to their camps. The Jets haven't. And my feeling on that is, even if somebody in Jets camp says, hey, I don't know if we're going to draft this guy, they always should call somebody in, especially when 2 of the teams are in your division.
Yeah.
And one of the teams is the Packers too. So it's like, if these teams are interested, you should always call a guy in for a workout, even if you're not sure. But the Jets don't do that. They limit themselves right out of the gate so that they turn themselves off to even a guy like that. And, everybody needs a guy who can run 4.25, honestly.
They bring in guys teams do now just to confuse the other teams.
Yes.
Because in the NFL, it's obviously a much bigger deal.
There's a lot of subterfuge.
Yeah, that goes on. But, there's so much that goes into the draft now. Like Walker is a guy, and I'm just so amused by this. So, there's discussion, as Mike said, about the fact that Thibodeau was falling. And Hutchinson, of course, who's a University of Michigan player, is the possibility for the Lions. But now, people are saying that maybe it's going to be Walker. Now, what's fascinating to me about Walker is all of a sudden, out of nowhere now, we've seen all this video on Walker that's on social media, at least in the group that I pay attention to. And what people are talking about, all the video is how he runs down guys, in the backfield or everything. Yeah. But there's no video of him beating anybody, in a pass rush. Like, he's not bull rushing somebody and going wide. And people are pointing out, yeah, he's fast, but this is the NFL. You're not going to be unblocked in the NFL.
Right.
So can you get by that? And, to me, that just points out of the level of sophistication that we now have in the draft, where the fan base is now talking about a guy's ability to take on blockers as opposed to just being a great athlete.
I mean, in my opinion, this is the most unspectacular NFL draft that I've seen in probably 15 years.
On the surface, it is.
Yeah. Now, let me just talk about this briefly, and then we can get started. There are pitfalls to social media, especially when you're tweeting about a game as it is going on. But I'm not somebody who's going to go back to something that I posted at a certain point during a game, and because it ended up not being true, deleting the post, because that's at the point in time that I tweeted something last night, which, it was 10 minutes left to go in the third period. Toronto was losing to Washington, third game in 4 nights. They were losing 3-1 to the Capitals. And I said, this is obviously not the plan that the Leafs wanted to follow, but this was the third game in a row that I think they played badly. They were going to end up being 3 points ahead of Tampa Bay with 2 games to play. And listed a whole bunch of things. The Leafs rally late in the third. They win the game in a shootout. And now everybody, like, afterward on my timeline says, well, this didn't age well, or you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I tweeted it when they were losing 3-1 and they were playing like crap. Maybe I should go back, Kev. Maybe I should go back and delete the tweet.
No, you shouldn't, but you should probably be a little bit more careful of, not surrendering, 10 minutes left in the game. I mean, sports as well as anyone. Yeah. A lot of weird stuff can happen.
Yeah. Right, but at the moment that I tweeted that, everything I said was true. 5 minutes later, after Russ's boy,
you gotta learn qualifiers, Mike. You gotta learn qualifiers. It's like as it looks now, comma.
Yeah,
yeah. You went with emotion. You did.
Yeah,
well, to me, it was like, especially with rumors. I have to qualify everything because everything changes every minute.
And social media has forced us all in the microwave instead of putting things in the slow cooker. I did want to make one point before we start the show, and I can make it relevant talk as well. I don't know how many of you saw the Cabrera 3000 hit, and we also had the wonderful And then, of course, they always do it well. Montreal Canadiens celebration of Guy Lafleur's life.
Yeah.
And nobody does it better than the Canadians.
Yeah.
But I was struck by Cabrera's celebration of his 3,000 hit and how real it was, and the emotion that he had over that, and the reaction of his teammates, the reaction of the other team. Many of the players on the other team, some of them he had played with. Iglesias came and hugged him at first base. The Latin American catcher did, and everything. He ran and took a photo with his family, and then wanted to get back to first base and talked about this afterward, because he had told his players, look, I'm going to be emotional about this, but we got to win the game. Right. So he went back and he stood on first base and he said, let's play ball. Let's go back and win. And I thought, man, what a classy way to do it. And I think every athlete in every sport should watch that. And that's how you do it.
Let me ask you,
was very beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because earlier in the week, Aaron Boone from the Yankees got excoriated for intentionally walking Cabrera in a 1-0 game in the 8th inning.
Yeah, why did he do that, Mike?
Why? Because it was 2nd and 3rd and 1 out, and he had to force the double play. That's why, Ross.
You know what? This is Aaron Boone.
I mean, no. This is New York. This is freaking New York Yankee hatred run amok.
Nope,
That's
right. Nope, you don't do it.
First of all, I dispute your depiction of that. I went on social media and I looked at that, at least in the Detroit area. Now, you follow different people than I do. You follow Yankee people, I'm sure, and I don't, so I wouldn't see that. But in Detroit, there was a small collection of haters that got it. And my favorite part of that whole thing, because it was so incredibly amusing, was the next batter, of course, they hit a bloop single, and as the ball hit the ground, everybody went yay, and then within 2.1 seconds said boo. They continued the booing right after cheering that. In Detroit, Cabrera came out afterward and said, that I expected to be walked. I knew why he was walking me. Aaron Boone handled it so well. He said afterward, look, I didn't like to be put in that position. I'm a sentimental guy. I love Cabrera like everybody else. He's a favorite in baseball, but I got to do what I got to do for.
He didn't have to do it. It's his
prerogative. Yeah, but I had no problem with that. It was a baseball play. It was a baseball move. Cabrera has been walked like that. Like one of the stats they had on Baseball Network, how many hits would he have had he not been intentionally walked?
That's fair.
He is, and there's always just nutty statistics about that. And, he expected it, and he had no animosity for Boone. And once I think fans sort of realized that the people in the stadium were deprived of an at-bat. That's why they were upset.
That's why. Exactly.
Yeah, they were deprived of an at-bat. But I don't think, maybe in your world it was a big deal. I think it was sort of talked about, and then it just kind of died down, because the difference was, and I pointed this out, what he was going to do was inevitable. This isn't like Kershaw, preventing him from going for a perfect game. This is a guy who's going to get 300,000 hits. If he doesn't get it today, he'll get it tomorrow or the next day. So, if he didn't get it then, it's no big deal. So I thought it was the right move. He did what he needed to do. Cabrera respected it. Afterward, the Tiger players had no beef with it. You just move on.
The acrimony would have been worse had the Tigers not been playing at home the following series, because then it would have deprived them of him hitting 3,000 at home. I would have
seen the other thing. I think the reason the players acted the way they did with Cabrera, Kev, is because we know Cabrera is a clean player. He's been aging naturally. He's been doing this for a long time. He's only the third guy with 500 homers and 3,000 hits. Yeah. Like, it is truly remarkable.
Well, no, he's not. There's more than that.
Okay.
The third, when he gets one more double, he'll be only the third player with 500 homers, 600 doubles,
that's what it is,
and 3,000. And Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, I believe.
Like, that's the stat that I was trying to pour out.
I know the steroid cheat Rafael Palmeiro was a 3,000 hit, 500 home run guy. I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah. All right, let's talk
Kevin's right.
Ready? All right, here we go. I got a very, very interesting thing when I threw all the numbers into the projecting standings thing today. Wait till you see how the Western Conference is going to end up. Here we go. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, April 25th. April has flown by. It's Monday, April 25th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I hate math.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen. I got my highest scores on the SAT in math.
Yeah, me too.
It's my worst.
We both ended up writers.
My worst subject.
All right. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. The SATs, by the way, not everybody has to take them anymore. That's changing. If you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, this is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And last night, we cannot not start. We have to start, in other words, with the Vegas Golden Knights.
I told you.
I mean, come on. Less than a second left. They lost a point, and a point that is so critically vital to them at this point. That doesn't mean they're not going to make the playoffs, but that does mean it does definitely. It was a huge problem, why would it not be James Reimer, who is completely out of his mind, playing for the San Jose Sharks in that game to take that?
Well, the key here was that San Jose was not up 4-1.
Yeah, but let's. I'm going to dispute your premise just a little bit. I mean, I know where you're going on this, and I'm totally with you on board on that. But it was certainly an important, but it wasn't critical because Vegas has the tiebreaker. So that one point,
which is going to play out.
That one point isn't as vital as it could have been. Had they
Don't
not
let that ruin a good story, Kev.
So no, I know. But saying all that, it's really incredibly fun, and I know I'm looking forward to Tuesday's game. I'm going to write about it for HockeyBuzz.
Yeah.
So
let me play this out for a second because I think this is kind of fun. I'm going to give you the projected predictors for all these for the games involving these three teams, involving Vegas. I think because LA's in.
Can I make one? Can I make one point before that?
Sure.
Because the narrative regarding Vegas has changed over the weekend with all the news that came out about Robin Lehner, and Logan Thompson played in the game on Sunday, and it came out on Saturday via Elliot Friedman that Lehner apparently didn't like the way he was being treated or criticized by Peter DeBoer, and announced that he was going to have season-ending surgery because of what he's been dealing with. And then it was revealed.
He never announced it. I'm going to correct you there.
Okay.
It was reported.
Emily Kaplan reported it, right?
Right. So now, he
was close with Lehner.
He didn't play on Sunday. We don't know what his status is. He hasn't had the season-ending surgery, but this is just all a big distraction at the absolute worst time, Kev. And that's the thing. It's like they don't need any more distractions other than the fact that they're 3 points out of a playoff spot with 3 games to play.
Yeah.
No, that's a bad distraction. Right. All right, so here we go. Tuesday night. Tonight, the hockey world will be glued to the television as the Flyers play the Blackhawks. But after that.
Yeah, and that's the ESPN game.
So tonight's your last night to maybe.
They won't even have 1 million viewers for that.
I know that's crazy. Might be your last night to watch baseball for a while tonight. All right. After that, so Tuesday night comes up. Nashville, Calgary. Okay, projected standings, overtime win for Nashville, based on trends and all that. Remember, this is all. I've got 21 factors in this thing. So when I do predictions, it's kind of fun. Last year was really, really good at predicting. We'll see what happens here. All right, so take that all with a grain of salt. It takes everything in matchups. It takes how tired the team has been, what their motivation is, whether they have to win or not. All that's into account. Nashville overtime win in Calgary. It doesn't really matter. It's just a win for Nashville.
Is this computerized, Eck? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Plug it in? Okay. Right.
My wife and I put this together 2 years ago, and it's really fun. Put it all in. Then Vancouver, I had forget them. I had them in there. I was doing them for a little bit, but they don't factor in at all. And then of course the other game tomorrow night is Vegas and Dallas, right? Which is the big game we talked about. The computer predicts Vegas with an overtime win over Dallas. So that's not really what Vegas wants because that's 2 points, 1 point for Dallas.
Well, then they're 2 points behind Dallas again.
Right. That's what ends up with that. Wednesday night, Dallas beats Arizona straight up. We get that right. Vegas beats Chicago. All right. So now and then when that's Wednesday. Thursday night, Nashville loses to Colorado. Vancouver has an overtime win over LA. That doesn't matter anymore with our situation. Friday night, Dallas loses to Anaheim. Nashville beats Arizona. and Vegas beats St. Louis in overtime. So if that scenario plays out, all three of the teams, Vegas, Nashville, and Dallas, end up with 96 points. All three of them have 96 points. And that's the scenario that plays out there. If that's the case, then you go to tiebreakers, right? Like Kevin said, Nashville has the best tiebreaker. Nashville's in. They have the most regulation wins by quite a bit. They have right now they have 35 regulation wins. They would have 2 more based on this. They have 37 regulation wins. Right now, Vegas has 33 regulation wins. Dallas has 30. So Vegas would get the final spot if that scenario played out that way.
Yeah, they have the tiebreaker. I mean, I just boil it down to the Dallas has to win that game against Vegas, or they got to win 2 of their last 3.
Right. That's it. That's what.
And they're in. You know, so
and Anaheim
I
has
think
been
the
a
odds
bad
of
team
those
for
2
Dallas.
games going to overtime are very slim. I do.
Yeah, and you know what? If Dallas doesn't make the playoffs, they have nobody to blame but themselves, because with the last 2 games being Arizona and Anaheim, if you don't win those games, it's on you. I mean, not to say that, you know, these teams who are out of the playoffs, they're playing without pressure, fast and loose. They're, you know, they can just go out and play, and there's no ramifications. And sometimes with a team that they're playing against, when they're tight, you know, it's tough. It's tough for them to win. Like tomorrow, Detroit plays Toronto. Toronto wants to clinch for second place in the Atlantic. I'm sure Detroit's going to just go in there happy-go-lucky and say, "Hey, if we can win, we can win."
But let's think about this, Mike, for a second. Remember, those 3 teams are tied with 96 points, and I'm counting Nashville as a win over Calgary. Okay, so if Calgary tonight beats Nashville, suddenly the Predators are in big trouble. And because then, you know, they have Colorado, who they could still beat, and then they have Arizona, who you think they would beat. Arizona playing a major role in this race down the end here, with, you know, Arizona playing Dallas and Nashville. So Nashville is not, like, again, still not safe. You know, not safe at all.
No, not yet. But you know, this is one of those things where I've said before that all the things that I've learned about hockey, don't end up being true. But you know, what have we said for 1,000 years is that there's no one more dangerous than a team that's out of the playoff race. Nothing to, so I mean that in the old days we would say that, like, beware of Arizona. They got you know, nobody cares. They're playing loose. They're trying to get stats. You know,
Anaheim too. I mean, that's the other thing for Dallas. Anaheim is not going to be an easy game. Anaheim on the last game of the season is going to have their season.
Yeah, and Anaheim is pretty competitive, like all the time. That, you know, the key is that both Dallas and Nashville are in control of their fate.
Yes.
They do.
Vegas is the only team that is not in control of its fate. So
Vegas has the easiest schedule, which is interesting.
So, but that, you know, that game, I mean, the fact that I think that's the fun aspect of all this is tucked right in the middle of this is Dallas versus Vegas.
Yeah,
you know,
right. I'm just happy we had this. You know, sometimes you don't have this much drama.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's
right. It's a 3-point game, like my thing predicts it'll be, because they've always played each other tight. If it's a 3-point game, and
and then all of a sudden the point does become important. Like one point didn't matter because Dallas had the tiebreaker, but if there's 3 points in that, then it does. And of course, any Vegas losses obviously will impact it as well. You know, but you know, if you're Dallas, I mean, that's what you're telling. That's what Boness is telling his troops. Look, guys, you know, we're in control of our own destiny. So this is what you want, you know. So let's just, you know, take advantage of that. And
I mean, last night the Predators get a big win against Minnesota, right? That's an overtime win. And that, if they don't win that, and that these like I've been saying the whole time, the Predators have to really play well to get in and out. And you know, they go to an overtime win against Minnesota. Calgary is better than Minnesota. Both teams don't really. Well, Minnesota's got a little more to play. I think Minnesota still have a chance at home ice. I'm not even sure.
No, right now they're tied with St. Louis. They have a game in hand.
Okay, yeah. So that's a big game for Minnesota.
That was a big game for them to win.
Yeah, it was a big game for them. So that's something for the Predators to take that. That's a huge win for the Predators, obviously. And it keeps them in this, because otherwise, I mean, this Calgary game now is just a scary game. So those 2 games tomorrow night are going to be just fascinating. I mean, Vegas, Dallas, and Calgary and Nashville are both.
And in the other conference, even though maybe it's a little less now, but still, still has some ramifications is the Carolina Rangers game. And Kev,
Yeah.
I know that, I'm the one who always is always the worrier about goaltenders getting injured. So I now, I'm using the Carolina Hurricanes current situation as the reason why I always say that, because we don't know the status of Freddie Anderson. It's still up in the air. It's the usual a week before the playoffs. They're sort of being shrouded. It's being shrouded in secrecy. And then on the weekend, Antti Ranta goes out of the game, and now their number one goaltender, if both of them are out, is Pyotr Kochikov.
Whether they had Kochikov or Ranta doesn't change anything. They were in trouble if they're in trouble if Anderson can't play. Like, is Ranta better? Yeah, but
I like Kochikov better than Ranta because
whatever. It doesn't matter. If either guy they have, they're not.
But I think here's the one thing. I've seen Brindamore as a coach be able to pull off the rally around the not great goalie, probably better than most coaches in the league and most teams in the league because of their defense. Right. And Kochikov definitely can play a very good, safe style. He's a smart guy. He's played in the KHL. He's not a young kid. So I do believe it's possible for them to win with him. Where Ranta, I just feel like sometimes he does fold. And Kochikov doesn't have that in him right now. Like, we don't know what he's going to do, but we know what Ranta can't do sometimes. So I would rather bet on Kochikov than Ranta. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, but I would just say, and this would be a betting thing. It's probability, and the probability is that you're not going to do as well with either of those.
He won a couple of games, right? So
but okay, Russ. In spite of the fact that Freddie Anderson's history in the playoffs is not great. He was good back in, I think, 2015 with Anaheim, but ever since he was with the Leafs, his history was not good. I mean, he was probably in a position to sort of refute that playoff history this year with Carolina. Now, even if he plays, he's probably going to be less than 100%. Their chances of making a deep run are worse now with Kochikov instead of Anderson.
In my mind, they're not. I'm not telling you. Come on. Listen, I don't trust Freddie Anderson, and I don't love Ranta. So I'm just going to tell you, I disagree with you.
Yeah. No, you can disagree.
I mean, Kochikov has the great story, the goalie story that we've seen so many times in the NHL. Like that situation of like a guy suddenly out of nowhere comes in and he's
very mentally strong too.
Well,
we've seen this before. This would not be unprecedented to see him suddenly just take the ball.
It happens, but it's not likely. I mean, that's we always got to look at it. I mean, Logan Thompson shouldn't be playing the way he has either. Yeah, based on how history.
Kochikov has more of a pedigree than Logan Thompson.
Well,
but still, neither one of them should be. Like there's going to be no general manager or coach of the game today that would say, "Yeah, boy, I'm a little more afraid of Carolina now."
They're not going to say that, but they aren't
going to think that either. They aren't going to think that.
No, there is something either. But again, they don't know a lot about this goalie either, and neither do the players. And sometimes that's a negative.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. It just doesn't happen often. Right. Like so.
What happens when a Rod Brindamore coach? What happens when a Rod Brindamore coach Carolina team runs out of goalies and they have to rally behind something? I mean, we've been here. The interesting thing here is
they tend to do pretty well with that, actually.
Right? I mean, and we remember how they won with the Zamboni driver.
It was one game.
I know, but the reality is, there's something about a team and Brindamore as a coach, loves this kind of stuff. Like he's like, okay, I can really motivate my guys to play team defense. Like they have to play defense. Third string goalie. We're not going to hang this guy out to dry.
I'm not saying it's not possible that they rally around Kochikov and they win a series or something like that. Yeah. What I'm saying is their chances of making a deep playoff run would be better with an experienced goaltender like Freddie Anderson, who's having a great year.
Definitely.
That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. That's the only thing we're saying that you can't. The fact that we're talking about that it just isn't likely. Doing it now. Could they pull off that? Could they pull off an upset? Well, of course. I mean, this is sports. I mean, the one thing
this sport's different than any other when it comes to this particular thing with goaltending. Like it's like, I mean, if you're your third string quarterback going into the playoffs, you're in trouble. Okay, if you have your top two starting pitchers out going into the playoffs, you're in trouble.
And
But-
and the way
But
the
with
way
goalies, there's always a chance, and it feels different than that. It feels way different than the third
Well, I'll
string
tell you
quarterback.
what's the difference between a third string quarterback and a guy like Kochikov is a third string quarterback is usually a guy who's either never gotten a good enough chance because he's just not that good, or he's a washed up guy that's like 35, 36 years old that you really don't want in there. Where this guy has just never had his chance.
Yeah,
So that's why I would never put him as like a third guy.
And this year
has a lot of upside.
And this year he's played in the KHL. He came over early, played 15 games in the AHL. Now he's playing in the NHL, and he's only 22 years old. So, maybe the ignorance of youth in terms of like the situation that he's being put in, they can have some success. And the way things are lining up right now, they're going to be playing the Bruins with a injured Pasternak and a rookie goaltender in Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, I think that's an equalizer a little bit.
Now there were two other things.
Russian goalies right now. Russian goalies are, it's the time. I mean, Russian goalies are this is the top of the Russian goalies.
We're not talking about Askarov, and we're not
talking.
In
history, have we ever seen Russian goalies?
Again, Mike,
I mean, this is just.
He may not have the name of Askarov, but in international play, you can go look at his numbers. They were spectacular.
Right. No, I realize that, but so there were.
They picked him in the second round for a reason,
right?
I'll tell you that they don't just pick goalies in the second round if it's a prayer. They know that he's got something.
Yeah.
There were a couple things that happened yesterday that I think are notable and could have an impact on the playoffs. And the first one was Alex Ovechkin getting tripped. And I don't think it was a purposeful trip. He came in on a breakaway. He shot wide. He got entangled with the Leafs goalie, Eric Shalgren, went into the boards full speed, contacted with his left shoulder, left the game, and didn't come back. Now, I haven't heard any report this morning about his status, but I mean, I've seen players.
She said after the game, the players think he'll be all right.
Right, but I have seen players go into the board slower and separate their shoulder. Now we know he's a superhuman, so I would think he'd be back for the playoffs. But if he's less than 100%, Kev, I mean their chances were long anyway.
Yeah, although they've played better. I wouldn't totally discount them. They do have the experience. Usually players don't say anything about injuries, and I thought the fact that Oshie was willing to say, "Oh, we think he'll be all right." Was probably a good sign. Now,
counting him as day to day, not week to week. So.
Yeah, so I think that'll be fine, and I wouldn't. They've picked it up. Like everybody was writing them off, and I thought it was strategic. If you remember, before the trade deadline, Brian McClellan met with the media and basically said, I always do something. You guys write about that. I always do something. I don't think I will this time because our team just isn't playing all that well.
Yeah.
And I wondered if that was a purposeful statement that he wanted to let them know that he was really disappointed. And since then, they've actually played, much better. And they have a lot of guys that, can rise up and play. So I think they've got a shot. Like, it's kind of trendy to, even before the goalie injuries to say, well, I don't know if I trust Carolina Hurricanes. And nobody's kind of talking about Washington, but I wouldn't kind of rule them out. Like, I think they're, of all the teams, like they could be just based on the fact that nobody's talking about it, we could call them maybe a sleeper. Like they know they play in the playoffs.
I mean, right now they would play Florida, and I think
right now it doesn't look good, but
Florida's gonna be the heavy favorite. But
Florida again, I mean, obviously, it's hard to complain about Florida after losing a game to Tampa after winning 13.
Well, that was my other point, Eck, because I'm sorry, people were saying, well, Tampa Bay, they may be really tired after 2 Stanley Cup runs, and they haven't been playing well of late, and they weren't playing well of late. And then a week and a half before the end of the regular season, they open up a can of whoop ass on the Leafs, beating them 8-1, and then they end Florida's 13-game winning streak, beating them 8-4 in Florida. I'm telling you,
again, you misrepresented it, Mike. What people said about it is they were bored. That's what people said. Nobody said they looked tired. They said they were bored and they're not playing well. And what happened at the end is suddenly they had some challenges, and one of them was going up against the Florida Panthers. And as I said before, this will allow us to cue up the usual argument about whether a team can just turn it on and turn it off competitiveness when they want to. I thought they rose up, and it also pointed out another thing that people have talked about since the midseason, and since Ekblad's been out, is the Florida team good enough defensively?
Right.
They're on the edge. They're on the edge. That's true.
Yeah. So
Ekblad hasn't come back yet.
Yeah, he hasn't come back yet. But I think, I pointed this out on radio this morning. Ekblad's a 25 to 26 minute guy, so that's almost half of your game.
Yeah, that's
so like if you think about that, he's going to play half their game when he gets back, and he's pretty darn good defensively.
Right.
I think they'll be fine. But I've watched, I would say 80% of Tampa's games because I like them, and they have not played poorly. They have not played well, but I thought that they have looked bored, but they didn't look bored against the Maple Leafs or the Florida Panthers.
They were a heck of a game last night. Honestly,
But I don't know that anybody said they looked tired. Maybe on social media, but
they were making a statement last night. Now I'll just say this: we expect we expect Hedman to play like Hedman. We expect Kucherov and Stamkos and Point to be stars, which they are. When you're getting Nick Paul scoring a couple goals and one like Trevor Zegras through his legs, that team is unstoppable. So if you get like secondary scoring on top of your star player, and this is why this is the last team I wanted Toronto to play, because this team is a juggernaut, and I don't know if they can be stopped, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're a juggernaut.
They're a juggernaut.
They're not a juggernaut.
They won 2 Stanley Cups in a row.
Yeah, but they're not the same team. Okay. You can say they're a very good team, and they're defending champs. They're not a juggernaut this year. They're not. Okay. Florida's a juggernaut. Now, if they go one and done, hey, that happened to Tampa once too, but Florida's more of a juggernaut than Tampa is.
I'd say they've earned the right to be called a juggernaut, though. I mean, your point is well taken, Russ. I'm not going to argue because they've lost – their depth has eroded beyond recognition.
That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, but I think they've earned the right. When you win 2 cups in a row in a 32-team league.
I mean, I'm also worried about McDonough being able to just get through the playoffs. I mean, he's pretty bad enough.
And, what nobody's talking about this year is – and, I don't want it to come out like that he's been, a 4-point, goals against goalie, but Vasilevsky's been ordinary this year.
Yeah.
That's why he looked ordinary on some of those goals.
He played too many games this year. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about last night's game and looking forward to these teams, as a battle in the second round, if that happens or whatever is going to happen.
Like Florida didn't play well and scored 4 goals.
They didn't play well. They scored 4 goals. And really, the reality was, if games are called like that with 13 power plays, that definitely favors Tampa in that series. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. Like, Tampa's got a way better power play. Tampa went 3 for 7. Florida went 1 for 6. It's like that power play that Florida has. I'm not a big fan of that 5-forward power play they do. It just doesn't work, and I wish they'd get off of it.
That's an interesting point here, Rack, because we talk about this every year right before the playoffs.
Yeah,
and I don't know if we can ever expect things to change because they don't. I don't expect when we get to the playoffs, okay, so for example, as you get closer to the playoffs, I think things start to change. Kyle Clifford bopped Corey Perry over the head with his stick in the game against Tampa on Thursday. Early in the season, that might get a 1 or 2 game suspension. I mean, it wasn't like he chopped him. It was like, like antagonizing, tapping. He got a $2,500 fine and no suspension. As we get closer to the playoffs, what you have to do to get suspended, the severity of it goes up, and I think in terms of the referees calling penalties, you have to be drawing blood to get calls, or it has to be.
You don't see many playoff games with 13 power plays in them. Like that,
no. I'm saying you get 2
that's
or
what I'm
3
saying. I think you're saying Mike is right.
Yeah, 2 or 3 power plays is what you're going to get.
No, I agree with that. And that was watching that game last night. That was a big part of that game. That was a big part of that game.
Yeah, but the players also don't play the same way in the playoffs. They play with more intensity, but they don't get those foolish hooking penalties where they just get lazy. there's no lazy penalties in the playoffs. Or very few.
Yeah, you're right. And I also sense from Florida's side, at least, a little bit of like, this is such an emotionally charged game against Tampa. But you don't want to blow somebody's hand out in a fight. You don't want to do something stupid like that right now.
They didn't do anything stupid last year. They almost beat them.
I know, but no, in the playoffs, it changes.
Right, in the playoffs, yeah.
But with 3 games to go before the playoffs, I think last night that was a little bit hard to read how that was going to go. I mean, there were a couple good fights, but and they were really,
Well, here, Ek, I wanted to mention
Bennett's fight on Sergachev was a really good fight, but
with Vasilevsky, he's had to make the second most amount of saves in his career this year.
Mhm.
He's going to play the second most games this year, second most minutes that he's ever played this year. Like, this has not been an easy year for him.
right.
Yeah, and I will grant Kevin's point because he's watched him a lot more than I have this year. I've watched him maybe 10 games. His save percentage is .917. That's about average. That's around average. And .915 to .920 is average. And there are
But he's faced 1,659 shots, Mike. That's a lot for a Tampa team.
Yeah,
that's what makes Shesterkin's year so incredible is that he's played 52 games and his save percentage is almost .940.
Yeah,
I would say the difference this year with him is we're used to him having some unbelievable games, and he hasn't had as many of those.
No, that's fair.
Like he's still good. He's still very good. But he just hasn't been as spectacular. I mean, his level of expectation is so high.
Yeah,
it's just like when Shesterkin, went through that little lull when he wasn't quite as great. Well, he was still good. He just wasn't as great as he was earlier in the season when he was unbelievable.
Now, I will give a nod to Hart and Vezina Trophy winner Ilya Sorokin playing for a non-playoff team that played below average this year. He's having a fantastic year. I mean, his save percentage is .926 and his goals against is 2.38 for a team that has been well out of the playoffs for 2 months. I mean, that's a statement of how good of a goaltender he is.
Yeah, I do have to correct something that I said because I said the Predators won last night in overtime. They lost in overtime 5-4. I apologize on that one.
Right.
To the Wild, but still that so they're still in that spot. But that was a big game for the Wild, and still that point is a big game for the Predators. And, looking at, I don't know why I saw that wrong this morning when I woke up, but I was just looking through it now. And man, the Wild doubled up on the Predators in shots in that game. So the shots are 47-25.
The Wild have a lot better offense than people give them credit for.
Yeah, that's
well, it's like
Predators,
league, yeah. So.
I mean,
Predators escaped to the point.
No, but nobody talks about that, Kevin. It's true. That is a fact. But when everybody's talking about like these high-powered offenses, they never talk about the Minnesota Wild.
Right.
Yeah, they don't.
No.
They really don't.
That's fair.
That's for sure. It was interesting yesterday. So, like you say, Boston and Carolina seem kind of locked into a spot. They seem like that. Seems like I mean, the Rangers could catch them still. So you could catch Carolina, but it's going to take a lot because Carolina's picked off especially because of the win yesterday for Carolina. They're 4 points back and 3 games to go. So,
well, the Rangers would have to finish ahead of them because Carolina's got the tiebreaker.
Right, they got the RWs.
They're 4 points ahead, but the Rangers have a game in hand. So, Carolina is likely winning the division. They haven't locked it yet.
No, I would agree with Mike.
But the real battle, and tomorrow. So what I did today with the standings, I do tomorrow for the Easter. We'll see about like how it plays out with Pittsburgh and Washington the rest of the way. At least how it predicts to play out.
Here's a warning sign for Pittsburgh. So in yesterday's game. Where you usually get this unbelievable all-out effort from Pittsburgh, you didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Crosby was mic'd up. We didn't get to watch the game, but he had something in his ear, so I'm assuming he was mic'd up with TNT, and he eventually scored a goal. But they had lulls in that game of times that they weren't completely engaged.
Right.
And the Flyers took advantage of that, and you kind of have to wonder now, is Pittsburgh starting to hit a little bit of a rut where playing that all-out style is catching up with them a little bit? That's the only thing I would worry about with them.
Well, I would find it hard to believe, Kev, that Pittsburgh would be picking and choosing because they're like one of the only teams in the East that if they say lose a game and Washington catches them for third place, they've had a tough time beating the Rangers, but they would play Carolina in the first round, and Carolina with their goaltending problems. I mean, that's dangerous to start.
They wouldn't, though, that's the thing. They wouldn't really because Boston has 103 points. Pittsburgh has 101. So
Right.
The
If,
reality
if Washington's got a game in hand, and if Washington,
Yeah, but the reality is, it's more likely that Boston stays in that first wild card spot and Pittsburgh dumps to the second wild card spot while
right,
Washington
and it'd
ends
be
up the third spot.
it'd be Florida. You're right. It would be
For
Florida.
the most part, yeah. But Carolina,
Yeah,
and I thought that when I was watching that yesterday, I'm like, man, looks like a team that wants to play Carolina. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they want to play
them
Carolina.
wanting to play Florida. That's
It's either they're going to get Florida or the Rangers. Now, I don't know who they'd rather play, and I don't know who I'd rather play if I was Pittsburgh, Florida or the Rangers.
I think I'd rather play the Rangers, but it's no picnic no matter what. So
I would rather play Florida. I mean, to be honest, but I'm of the mindset that I'd always rather play the worst goalie. Shesterkin is just the better goalie.
I see that argument. I do see that argument for sure.
We should mention that all the playoff teams in the Metro have at least 100 points, and I don't think that's happened since like 93, 94.
Yeah. No,
all 8 teams.
We knew it was going to be a juggernaut. This may have been better than what we all thought before the season began, though.
Okay, but yeah. all eight teams in the Eastern Conference have 100 points, and the spacing between 8th place and 9th place is 20 points.
It's crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're looking at 633 teams versus a 506 team. With the Islanders. I mean, there might be no one that finishes above 500. Besides the playoff teams. That's why we were sitting there saying the playoff teams are completely it's the opposite of parity, like I've said before. And 8 really good teams.
All 8 teams in the East have a positive goal differential, and all 8 teams that are outside the playoffs have a negative goal differential. Yeah. So if you use that as a determining factor, there you go.
But here's an interesting thing too. So Florida's got the 100, plus 100 point differential. And the Leafs are plus 56. Mm-hmm. And so you look at that and you say, well, how is that even possible? Because the Leafs have a great offensive team too. How is there such a difference just between those two teams?
The Florida is the first team to average 4 goals a game this late in the season since 1994.
That's nuts.
To average 4 goals a game is just insane. I mean, that's we haven't seen that forever. I mean, that's just a crazy.
Florida's first overall in goals scored. Toronto's second, and the difference between them is 25 goals.
Yeah,
that's not if you go down the line in terms of separation between teams, it's 2 or 3 goals, 4 or 5 goals.
Oh, this is crazy.
Florida's game in hand on Toronto in that race right there. So
the difference here doesn't even make sense.
It's very easy.
Mathematically, it doesn't even make sense. The 2 differentials, one being plus 56 and one being plus 100.
I know. I mean, Carolina's a plus 72 for crying out loud. That's an enormous number too.
But Calgary's plus 87 and Colorado's plus 80. And the reason Calgary is plus 87 is because they've allowed less than 200 goals so far. So they're playing. They're that way because their offense is good, but their defense and their goaltending is fantastic.
And we are going to find out about home ice because I do think home ice still has an advantage. And Florida's only lost 7 games at home. No ties.
Yeah.
No, no ties, no overtime loss.
No, they are. I mean, but last night, and it was an interesting choice to not go with Bobrovsky in that game because I think we all kind of.
It was back to back. It was back to back.
Right, but they could have played Bobrovsky in that game and played Spencer in the other game. I mean, they could have.
But that's risky doing it now.
Well,
this
Spencer,
big matchup.
Well, I can give you a little insight on that because Spencer Knight was the goaltender who gave up the 5 goals against the Leafs the previous time that they had played Toronto earlier in the month. So I think they said Bobrovsky because Bobrovsky plays better against Toronto, and then Spencer Knight plays against Tampa because what are you going to do? You have to play one or one.
And Spencer Knight was not good in last night's game, and especially the first period, right? So there were a couple goals there that Bob definitely probably stops, so that changes the dynamic. So I mean, that's as it plays out. But I think that that race is going to be crazy. But like we've talked about before, the injuries are starting to they're really playing a factor, and we thought they would because all these games have been compressed. So it's not going to get any better.
That's a plus for Florida because nobody has the depth they do. Nobody.
No, exactly. And Ekblad will be fine, and he'll be back coming in like Kucherov came in, and he'll be, you know.
Well, maybe. I mean, the thing is, Florida might be able to get away with winning in the first round without Ekblad, and if Ekblad is coming back at less than 100% in game 1 of the first round, they might hold him out until they absolutely need him. It may be a little dangerous, but
well, he's resuming game activities, so
yeah, he's real close. Yeah,
I am firmly of belief that he would have been back were it not for like, you know, the salary cap stuff that they can do, all the LTIR stuff.
Yeah,
he would have been back.
There's no reason to rush him back anyhow.
2 weeks after, right? So,
couple of things just at the end here. I think it's kind of interesting. I wanted to just talk about Jack Eichel being the Masterton for Vegas. And you know, this speaks to when I was president. One of my big beefs was that the ideal of the Masterton had sort of changed over time. And I always, you know, I think the original intent, based on my research, was that it was going to be a award, and it's written in terms of perseverance and, you know, contributions to the game, and over time, it's evolved into comeback player of the year. It's become too much about injuries.
Yes.
And I don't think that it necessarily you're going to exclude injuries from it. I think they have to be part of the mix. But I don't think it should be, you know, as Chris Letang said just a few years ago, it's the one award you don't want to win because you have had to have had a serious injury or illness in order to win it. Yeah. And I don't think we wanted that. So, you know, to see Jack Eichel win it and not, you know, like, guys like Nick Lidstrom, Chris Chelios, those guys probably should have been up for that award.
Yeah.
You know, I think the intent was it was going to be like a good guy award, a good citizen. And we've gotten away from that, and it's been about injuries. So I wish that we could sort of kind of go back. And
I can tell you this: when I interviewed John Rattel a few years ago, even though he's won a Pearson, even though he's won a Lady Bing, he held the Masterton in very high regard.
Yeah, I mean, it was just almost a lifetime achievement award. It was intended to be, and it really just is not. And I used to make the speech every year. Look, if we want a comeback player of the year, let's just have one.
Right, I agree with you on that too.
Let's just have a comeback player of the year, and we'll recognize the guy that's come back from difficult.
I mean, as an example, you know, Kevin Hayes is the one who won the nomination in Philly. And even with all my bitching, I still voted Keith Yandel #1 for the Masterton because, again, he is persevering regardless of his play. It's not about Hayes. He's still a great defenseman, but he's still getting out on the ice every day. And so I put Yandel in there regardless of what I felt about his play because of what Kevin just said, really.
Yeah.
Well, it's also become a let's give an award to a guy who's retiring. Like Ryan Getzlaf got nominated for, and I mean I'm not casting aspersions on Getzlaf's career because his career's been fantastic, but he got nominated for Anaheim. Zdeno Chara got nominated for the Islanders. I mean, they're great players. But
both those guys are guys. It doesn't have anything to do with retirement. I think guys get nominated because they're retiring, but that's really the kind of guys that originally this award was for.
Okay,
that would be my point. I mean, I think guys do tend to get nominated, but Chara's been nominated several times because he's very deserving. I mean, perseverance. Who's persevered more than Chara?
I'm not sure he's even won. Has he won?
The state of the game. And one other point, and I thought, you know, my colleague Bob Duff had this statistic today. And I thought it was an important one because, you know,
Chara's not won a Masterton. Sorry, Kevin.
No, he's not. No, but he's been nominated before.
That's crazy.
And he should have won it a long time.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And Bob Duff had this stat, and I think it's important because I don't think, even though I think Moritz Seider should be a slam dunk to win Rookie of the Year because of all the different ways he helps the Red Wings beyond points and everything else. I mean, he certainly helps in points too. He's right up there. But, you know, he's a physical presence. He blocks shots. He leads the team. He's the minute guy. He became the #1 defenseman as a 20-year-old the minute he took the ice. All those things. But one of the problems he has is that little statistical plus-minus thing. He's at -10. I've seen some discussion about it on social media. Bob Duff went through, and Jeff Blashill is a goalie who pulls – as a coach who pulls his goalie quicker than most goalies or most coaches.
Right.
And he said the Red Wings set a new record for empty net goals this year. I don't know how many is, but it was in the 50s, I think. And Moritz Seider was on the ice for 22 of those because he's always on the ice.
He's always on the ice.
He's trying to get a goal.
That's a fascinating stat. Yeah.
So
Good
if you
work by
take
Bob
those,
on that.
you
Really
take
good
those,
work.
you take those 22 empty net goals, he's plus 12 on a team where they've given up a zillion goals and they've been among the worst defensive teams in the league. I mean, their defensive game has just been horrendous.
Well,
all year round. So
let me ask this question: Who, in the end, who is responsible for too many men on the ice penalties? Is it the coach? Is it
coach?
It's the coach.
Yeah.
The Leafs lead the league with 14 too many men on the ice penalty. They, by a sizable margin, and I especially in a 3-on-3 overtime, they get called for too many men.
Because they're aggressive. They need to be a little less aggressive.
Why? Well, that's really gonna come back to bite them in the playoffs, and those are the type of things that swing games.
I can tell you another coach only because I covered him a lot that used to get a lot, and that was John Stevens. Eck would back that up.
Yeah,
Stevens got a lot of too many men on the ice too, and I think it's because they are very aggressive.
It's a serious aggressiveness. Gallant in Vegas. That one year the Vegas had that incredible year. Gallant. That Vegas night team had tons of too many men on the ice.
Yeah.
It really just comes with just attacking. Like it comes with, trying to get that extra little bit.
Yeah, it isn't always obviously the coach's fault because players sometimes jump the gun and do things that they shouldn't. But ultimately, a coach, when you talk to him about it, always say, it's my responsibility to make sure everybody's aware of their deal. So they usually take the blame for it.
Right. Yeah, they usually do. Makes tons of sense. All right, that's all the time we have for today, folks. So enjoy the Flyers Blackhawks game tonight, and we'll be back again tomorrow with lots of fun things to talk about. And we'll talk about the Eastern Conference tomorrow and how that's going to play out. And then Wednesday we'll be back with Kevin to talk about where we are. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.